Something we've realized more and more is that it really just comes down to vibes.
Just vibes.
Just vibes. If we're not in a good mood, we cannot record.
Oftentimes, the problems people are facing today are emotional, relate to identity, relate to resonance, right? And so then how do you think about that? It's a very different way of thinking about it now.
The main thing that I have found in terms of the people that I want to listen to online and the people that I want to talk to is just authenticity.
A few people have asked me how we come up with what topic we want to talk about for our podcast every week. And, you know, we've mentioned before in a podcast, like, oh, you just come here to find out what's interesting and relevant to us. But I realize that's kind of a hard sort of like, okay, but then there's so many things that, that's kind of vague. There's so many things that could be interesting and relevant and are interesting and relevant to us. And I think there's also been a progression as to how we kind of view this, which relates to some of our discoveries in terms of what is it that people are looking for nowadays. And a lot of it is how, you know, you think about what people are seeing, what resonates with people, and it is authenticity. It is people who are willing to, you know, and are able to be honest, not just with themselves when they're hanging out with other people, but then be able to do that in front of a camera.
Yeah.
And that's actually really hard.
Yeah, like creativity and like, I don't know, inspiration is really
it's delicate.
It's delicate.
It's fragile, and it's something where when you're working with something where it isn't creative and, you know, you can just brute force it. Like, you're not feeling it, that's fine. You just use your willpower, you put in the time, you put in the effort, and you can get that. And that was something that our family always talked about. It's like, oh, time and effort, that's all you need.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, but at a certain point, there's actually a difficulty in, you know, being able to feel truthful, to be authentic, to, you know, to be creative, to be fun, to be funny, you know, those sorts of things.
I remember when we were first starting doing the podcast, it was a little bit more brute force than, you know, creative, natural, you know, let's just go with the flow.
Right. Well, we didn't even know how to frame that as a goal. Like, initially when we first started doing the podcast, I was like, okay, we have this topic, and here's kind of like, we would talk through beforehand, like, oh, we're going to make these points, this guy, you know, and all that sort of stuff. And it would just be, basically, I would just blab a bunch of information, and you'd blab some information, and blab some information, and that was the podcast, right?
Yeah.
And I think that...
that's kind of vague. I mean, you could say that is
that's still kind of what we're doing, but the way that it feels, the way that you watch it, it comes across very, very differently. And there's a reason why, and it's because before, we didn't even know, like, how to try to make it entertaining. We're like, oh, hey, this is gonna be like interesting, maybe in theory.
It was more about like, I remember like you were slightly less patient in those days, where sometimes like I would sit down in my chair and then I'd slightly shift my seat, and you'd be like, oh my gosh, I have to redo the focus because I shifted in my seat, and then I'd just be sad for the rest of the podcast.
You're just like, hi world.
and then something I think we've realized more and more and more is that it really just comes down to vibes.
Just
vibes. Because okay, if we're not in a good mood, we cannot record. Period, full stop.
Although I don't know if it's necessarily like, because there'll be days where it's like, maybe we're not just like ecstatic. It's not necessarily being happy. It's more being comfortable and being like
comfortable
able
and authentic.
to. Yeah, that's the main thing. Because you can be authentically like, I'm tired.
Yeah, we did one where we were sick. Where we were like,
oh yeah.
We are sick today.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk about sickness. And also just like right before we pressed record, I was like yawning.
We're like,
I'm so tired.
Yeah. And like just before this podcast, we're all like, oh, I'm tired. You know, in some of the best podcasts right beforehand, we were like, oh, I'm so tired. But then if we were in the mood and we were like together and we had the vibes, whatever it was, then it was able to be a very good podcast, which is something that we didn't even know how to really aim towards in the beginning.
It's still hard to aim towards it.
That's true,
like, But like,
at least we know what it feels like now.
Yeah.
And we'll sometimes start recording and we're like, not feeling it, this is not right.
Yeah.
And then we'll be like, okay, either we need to redo or try another time or something else.
But it's like, you know, I'm thinking from the viewer's perspective, like, great vibes. Thank you for the helpful note.
Yeah.
But like, how are you actually supposed to approach that? Like,
well, I feel like maybe talking a little bit about like what is it, some of the discoveries along the way, because initially it was kind of just an iterative process where we would do a podcast and we're like, oh hey, that was good or better for some reason. Like we didn't actually know like what was qualitatively different, and then we were kind of like, let's try to do that again. But then at a certain point we're like, okay, us being able to be comfortable, which was actually something that we've grown really, really fast in terms of just being able to even do that and start doing that, because this year you turn 13, and that's kind of the age where you're starting to discover who you are, and you're getting a better idea of like, who am I, separate from the sorts of things that kind of, help you to navigate the world when you're a kid and you're still relying on oftentimes the people around you to guide you. And so those sorts of things. And it's really difficult. And I think that the podcast has also allowed you to rapidly kind of get to that point, because it's like you're discovering yourself, and then being able to present that when you're still figuring out what that is. And also for me, like we both just basically have been growing really, really fast this year. And so, and I think that that's part of the, the struggle is like, you're a changing human being.
Especially for us, because like I've definitely grown a lot this year. And so it's kind of hard. Like my interests will change. And also like how I view different things. Like sometimes one structure will work really well for like, I used to like our podcasts are never... Our podcasts are never scripted.
Yeah.
But sometimes when we would have a couple, or a few main points that we'd, pin up, and sometimes that would work really well. Sometimes it wouldn't. Like sometimes I just start overthinking it.
And that's why before this podcast we were just doodling on the whiteboard and we're like, okay, I think we have a good idea. Okay,
here's the thing. Like it's so random in terms of when we're going to figure out the idea for the podcast, how long it's going to take to prepare, if we're just going to dive in and be like, we'll figure it out, and for this idea, I was literally just doodling on a whiteboard and thinking and just doodling random thoughts that came to mind for podcasts. And then we found something.
You just drew a heart. Maybe we can talk about love. And then I'm like, where are we going with it?
That was a joke. I didn't actually want to talk about love.
That was part of our process to getting where we are now with this topic was, okay, let's just kind of throw some ideas out there and get the ball rolling, because sometimes you come up to me like, well, let's talk about podcast ideas, and you just sit there and I'm like, are you gonna talk or what's gonna happen?
Well, I came up to you today and I was like, Sue, we need to record today. We don't have any ideas. So
well, I had an idea, but I was like, this is too heavy. I'm not up for this right now. And I think that part of it is that a lot of it is, one, discovering yourself, and then two, getting comfortable with that, and then three, being able to then know how can I then be true to that in a way that's in a format that's not at all natural, like with cameras. It's kind of weird, You have to acclimate to that environment. And I think that there is something to, I think, part of the reason why I think this is a really valuable topic to cover is that a lot of people, in terms of how people think about value creation, is kind of shifting, because a lot more of what people care about nowadays is relationships, is can I resonate with someone, is this something that speaks to me? And what really will ultimately speak to you is like, is it something that is coming from a true sort of understanding of one human to another? And how really, like, if you get down to it, we're all humans, and so how true are you to really what's going on in terms of your human nature and the sorts of emotions that'll come up, up, right? And that's the sort of thing we were talking about earlier, how we went to Busch Gardens during the Halloween something, and they had people that came up to you with like these fake chainsaws that were super loud, and they tried to scare you with these masks and everything. And we're like, why would anybody want to do that? And a big reason why is because then people can be scared together, and they can feel closer to each other because they're scared together.
Because they had like a shared experience of being really frightened.
And that's something
I hated that, by the way. That was so...
Well, for us, we don't need to be scared together in order to connect with each other because we have so much experience connecting with each other.
Yeah.
But the fact that people would go to Busch Gardens with their friends to get scared by people with fake chain. I understand some people are into horror and we don't like understand that as much. But still, at the same time, even people who aren't into horror, they can see this is a way for me to connect to someone, because it's like you see their genuine expression of being scared, and I have a genuine expression of being scared, and we're in that together, and then we feel connected, right? And that's something, it's like those are the things that so many people are seeking when it comes to the shows or movies or clothes or brands or influencers and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's ultimately what a lot of people are searching for. And so to try to find that in yourself, I think can be really hard, because people have these like contrived notions of how to get there, like, oh, you got to have your personal brand and that sort of and it's kind of like a way of concocting it instead of like really where is it coming from, really what is it that we want.
I think that there's a lot of stuff around, going back to the brand thing, like around, inviting colors and what are the main things you're trying to communicate. But I think the main thing that I have found extremely, in terms of the people that I want to listen to online and the people that I want to talk to, just in relationships, is just authenticity.
Because as I said initially, when we first started, we didn't even know what is it that we were striving for, and we noticed some podcasts were better than others. And so then it was like we kind of reached a point where we were like, okay, be natural. And then we should be like, we're just gonna be natural, okay? And that was something where it was kind of a proxy for what is it that we're actually looking for. And part of the reason why people will emphasize brands so much is because they'll be wondering what is it that's actually attracting people. And then, but without really a deeper understanding of how people feel that connection and why it would resonate, then you think, oh, okay, it's the brand or whatever, and then we tried to recreate the brand separate from really having what's underneath, but it's what's underneath that really matters. It's what's underneath that we really want.
Well, with feeling authenticity, I think we came to one of the conclusions we came to is that in order to feel really authentic, like on camera, you gotta feel good. So sometimes we just play random funny stuff before recording just to like get us in the feeling good vibes.
I would be like, should we have a dance party or should we?
I didn't find the dance parties very
I don't know. I mean, sometimes we were just really not feeling it, and I was like, we just gotta do something, I don't know, and so and I think that's part of what's kind of so strange about it is like you're trying to like magically make it appear. Well, that's the whole thing, is like you want to be natural, but then there's so many ways, you can't be natural. You can't naturally force yourself to be natural, right? And so I think part of it is really what's understanding like what is it that we really meant when we said natural, which a lot of it is just being able to, I think it's just really hard to feel secure in yourself as a human being when to be alive is to be insecure sometimes, to be uncertain and to be kind of like confused. It's like, I don't know, maybe we'll start talking and maybe we'll say something stupid and it flops, it's like, you don't know. And it's kind of like, even if you know exactly what you want to say, so then you can be overthinking, then you can be too certain, and then it's not natural. So there's like this balance to strike, and the way to strike that balance is not by focusing on striking the balance, but by just really trying to connect and be honest, right?
Like, how do you do that?
And it's so hard. And that's sometimes why you'd be like, I'm afraid, like, I don't want to, like, come across too certain, like, I know the truth, and here's the truth, I'm
a 13-year-old girl who's going to tell you all the truth about the world. And you were like, I don't want to come across that way. And I'm like, and it's like, but then also for you to be
too worried about coming across that way, and then you fall into an opposite problem of not being able to really convey what you actually want to convey and to be honest, right? And so what I was telling you is just to be honest. What is it that I actually am feeling about this topic, and how can I actually be honest about it, right? Which there's a reason why that's one of the scarcest things in the world, which is why when you find someone online in which it seems as though they're able to do that, then you feel very connected to them, is because that's actually really hard. And that relates to what we talked about in the K-pop Demon Hunters, and when it comes to the identity and everything that we talked about there, it's really, really hard to be honest with yourself. And unless you're honest with yourself, you can't really access that part of yourself that will broadly resonate, because people can see, hey, this is just a genuine human being.
Okay, right? We find it hard to do that, like the two of us. When we're having conversations. Can you imagine, like, I'm the more I've practiced this and tried to do this, the more I am just impressed with, one specific person, but, a few people online that I've seen. Like, can you imagine trying to do that by yourself? Right. In a room, looking at a camera. Which is just so unnatural.
And I think part of it is, like, first you got to start with yourself, then your relationships, then you can try to translate that on camera, and then you can try to translate that on camera by yourself. But it's kind of a progression, because first you got to be honest with yourself, and then we're talking about how, like, a lot of people would, like, try to do all these things. Like, for us, it can be kind of unnatural, where we'll hang out with people and they'll be like, oh, what do we want to do today? And, like, how can we have fun today? And it's like, there's nothing wrong with that. But for us, it's kind of weird, because we're used to our relationship in which we don't ever need to, like, come up with things to do. We're just there, and we're just, like, chilling, we'll just be like
collapse.
We'll just randomly just, like, if a song pops in our head, we'll just be like, what is love? Baby, don't pop me. And then you're joining in, and then we're all just, like, chilling, and then vibing. And then there's no amount of, like, oh, I'm gonna burp, I need to, like, hide my burp, because and there's, like, those simple things that, like, show that you're not willing to just be completely comfortable and authentic with another person.
I don't know why there's a social stigma around burps.
I don't know.
It is totally natural.
It's a very natural human.
There's nothing wrong with it.
And so I think that there's something there in terms of, even for people with their closest friends, they won't necessarily feel that level of comfort to just be like, oh, I can just be honest, I can just share everything. And so part of that is, this year we've been building that with each other, and that very much translated to the podcast, because then it was like,
then we're able to do that on camera.
Then we're able to do that on camera, and then from there, if you know how to, like, because you kind of have to feel that out with another person before you can really just jump straight to, then now let me talk to a camera where I'm just looking into a void and imagining someone's there. Like, but that's part of what we talked about when we talked to the Girl Scouts, and we were talking about entrepreneurship, is that there's kind of this old, I'm saying old, but it's just kind of like the long-standing, here's how you be successful as an entrepreneur, is you need to think about a problem. But now, oftentimes, the problems people are facing today are emotional, relate to identity, relate to resonance, right? And so then how do you think about that? It's a very different way of thinking about it now, where I think to be able to think about how can I resonate with these people and the problems that they're feeling, not just facing practically, right? There's still, like, plenty of companies, plenty of solutions that are needed for just practical problems, like let's make this better, right? But then for a lot of what people are really facing, and to the fundamental, really, like, human need, which is that first and foremost, we want to feel fulfilled before we're going to care about any practical problems, right? We're going to feel connected. We want to feel connected so that we're not just, like, just depressed and lethargic, and then we're not going to want to buy any practical solutions, right? So there's kind of like an order of operations there, and to satisfy that first and foremost need is a difficult thing to do, because to even just find that within yourself is so hard, right? And I think that kind of relates to what is valuable today, what is necessary today in terms of how you actually do find success, and it does relate to how can I be honest enough with myself to be able to find that, so I can at at least just resonate with the people that I'm working with, right?
Yeah.
When we think about being creative, it's really hard to be creative with another person. You have to know how to be truly authentic and connected and honest with somebody in order for you to then be creative with them. And you know, we're thinking about, like, we do a lot of music together, and a lot of that is because we're so comfortable with each other. You just throw another person in there, ruins the whole, like, the vibe, you know, and then all of a sudden you're not able to do it. And that's something that's so weird and, like, not very tangible to understand.
Yeah, and it's really hard to master this. I mean, I think many people have gotten to the point where they feel very comfortable, you know, in themselves. But I mean, like, I'm still working on that. And, you know, I'm 13. Who feels comfortable in their own skin and not cringy and not just, you know, feeling good when they're 13.
Most adults, what they say is just like, oh yeah, as a teenager, you're just gonna look back on your teenage years and cringe.
You just gotta get through the times when you just suck. And you just
look back,
don't know what you're doing.
Know that you suck.
Yeah.
And but that's partly because it's so hard to find a mechanism nowadays for young people or anybody to be able to be authentic, because, you know, the environments that we're in generally don't lend ourselves towards that. And it's like the relationship that we have where we can be so comfortable with each other, that's partly because we, like, grew up together. We knew each other since we were literally born.
Not just partly, like, that I feel like it's really hard. You need to have history with people. And you need to feel comfortable around people, to the point where even when you're uncomfortable, you go there to feel comfortable.
And that's part of what's so damaging about, you know, a lot of families, you know, because the kids are at school all day, parents are at work all day, we're not getting what family generally allows us to have, which is family around us that sees the worst and the best sides of us. And what's really important about that is, I know that you've seen the worst sides of me, and we're still accepting each other, and that allows me to accept the worst sides of me. And that's part of being honest with yourself, right? And that's the whole concept that we talked about in the K-pop Demon Hunters podcast, was if you hide from the worst parts of yourself, they'll take over. And so most people, you know, that's just the main thing that, you know, is a broad human struggle, is how do I face the worst parts of myself? And even that is such a big struggle on its own. But then to go past that, to accept the worst sides of yourself, and then to be able to showcase that authentically, right? That's also really scary, because it's hard enough to accept in yourself the worst parts that I know that I have, but then to just put that on display, honestly, that's even harder. Right? And so to do those two steps, I think there's a reason why that's especially scarce, that's especially valuable today.